Yeah. Hey, Stacy, while we're waiting, they're still working on trying to get the live feed up and running.
Nothing yet.
Can you just give us a little bit of your background
I've got something else on here,
and
stream
why
setup
you're
help.
wanting to be involved with the short-term rental committee?
Software, paste it.
Hang on one second. Let me get
Oh, you can see it.
on.
Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. You'd like me to give some personal background and my reason for being on the committee?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, my name is Stacy Genevieve. I'm married to my husband, Jamie, for a lot of years. We both graduated from Clarkson University, and we have 2 sons. Our boys are 23 and 24. We've been vacationing up in Alice Bay, Thousand Islands area for, I don't know, 35 years, and every summer, and we finally bought a place a few years ago. So now we're residents there, but our place is seasonal only. So obviously we close it up for the winter, and we're not there in the winter. So in the winter we live in Buffalo, unfortunately. So that's yeah, and we love to spend our summers up there now, boating, golfing, fishing, pickleball. We just love it. So I heard about this committee. Once we bought a place there, I started kind of following along with the town board meetings online. And yeah, so I heard that the short-term rental committee was starting. I've been on both sides of the issue with short-term rentals, and I thought that I could bring a balanced perspective to this. I've lived in our primary neighborhood here in Buffalo with short-term rentals coming into our neighborhood. And then I've also rented short-term rentals, so I've kind of been on both sides of it, and hopefully I can, help bring a balanced perspective. And I'm just interested in that, the whole issue relative to Alexandria Bay.
Well, very good, very good. Well, we're happy that we finally were able to get you on board with joining the meeting.
Great, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, because I did not realize that you were not local during the winter time.
Yeah.
The meeting is streaming now.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Very
online.
good.
So
very good. What were we doing wrong?
we had to open up another window. I'll show you.
Okay. Okay. So we have, besides the 4 of us, we have Stacy on speakerphone, and we have Mary Ann on speakerphone. I thought to kind of warm us up, Jerry sent out the updated draft from our last meeting, and I just have a couple of housekeeping things. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to take a look at it. But if we take a look at, on page 1, under the application section where we've got applications for a short-term rental permit, I did see in one of the other, I don't know whether it was like Placid or what town that we were referencing, but that there were certain conditions where a permit fee was not getting charged. And I thought it worthy to discuss whether we should put something like that in there. Here it is. It's on Lake Placid, where there's no permit fee charged for any owner-occupied short-term rental which is rented for 14 days or less in any calendar year. Still requires a permit, but they are exempt from the fee. So I do think that it's worthy, certain conditions if they're not renting it for a whole season, that we might want to waive the fee.
So how do we know that?
That's a good question. I don't know how Lake Placid would know it.
Right, I don't either. I do know they list on their website all of the permits that have been issued by location and name. I think, I understand and it's worthy of consideration, but I think we should try to think about that a little more as to how we would police that. Everybody could say, well, I'm only renting for 13 days. So that's all I plan on doing.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
It's
Okay,
probably a
so,
magic number so you could pay for their taxes. It might be how many days it takes you to
Pay taxes in town. Yeah, maybe.
right,
A lot of people would rather just help out.
right.
Well, let me just make
But
note
I
of that.
think, it's something to, keep a note of, if we can, sort of pin it down as to how we would word that and police it. And of course, it probably depends on what the permit fee is too. If,
Wasn't their fee like $300? I saw that
I don't
figure
recall.
somewhere.
but we don't know yet what the town board is going to want to charge for a fee, so, it may.
There are a lot of costs associated with this. You start adding up all the things you gotta do. I mean,
Right.
it's quite a lot of money.
It is. Okay, the other thing that I saw, throughout some of Lake Placid, agreement is they included language pertaining to, all persons and entities that have an ownership interest in short-term rental.
Just the new, the old, which one?
So on the one that I'm looking at, I just made notes on the one that Jerry just sent out last night.
That's what you're referring to?
So that's the new.
Right,
What page you
that's
got?
the new. On the first page, section B1, our language says the signatures of all owners or their designated agents. I'm thinking that, again, just kind of reviewing some of the language in Lake Placid, rental agreement, is that they have language that the application has to be signed by all persons and entities that have an ownership interest. I'm just thinking we might want to just, tighten
Why,
that
if
up
you just
a
have an
little bit.
agent or someone, like, that's probably, anybody can sign it if you're an agent, or to get
Well-
a town building permit, the agent for the owner.
I think what they're saying is that they want all people to sign. It's not just one person
I know,
on
but why?
behalf of.
What difference does it make?
Well, I'm just thinking of, like properties that if you have multiple owners, you want to make sure that all owners are on board with it being a short-term rental. That would be the only.
Or understand there's rules.
Right, and understand that there's rules and that there's implications. I know I'm involved in some properties where with cousins that are, scattered all over the country, but there's certain things that you have to have if you're getting a mortgage or something of that nature where you have to have all parties involved because there could be implications to owning the property if there are issues.
And I was just looking at the tax foreclosure notices. Some of those have like 10 different entities on one parcel.
Right.
So same thing, I might know what's going on, but does my wife know what's going on, or does my daughter, or whoever else is on it.
Yeah, I kind of think, an attorney could take that out of there, but I kind of think if they revised theirs to include things like that, they've done it for a reason, that
Right.
it kind of makes sense.
Okay, then on the second page, paragraph 3, we have it listed as a list of each property owner, the name of any manager or management agency managing the property, and/or. I'm just wondering, do we want and/or in there, or just cross that out, because it just should, it just should include. It's not an either/or situation.
I think yours printed differently than mine. What section?
No, she's.
Oh, these are the notes you did.
Yeah,
Right,
no,
okay.
this is
Oh,
the
okay,
draft
sorry.
that Jerry just
Yeah,
sent
yeah.
out last night.
My apologies. Yep, okay.
Okay. Now if we go down to the parking section,
Parking
number two. I thought that last time we had talked about, giving some leeway with with allowing more than one vehicle per bedroom, if space allows?
That was a big discussion.
Yeah, I don't.
Right. So, you know, my thought was if we put something in there to the effect of more than one vehicle per bedroom may be allowed, providing there is sufficient space for the requirement of 9 feet by 20 feet.
And if we're gonna do that, then I think we should also add language that is in the updated, North Elba one that says there should be no parking on the grass, and some other, restrictions concerning that.
I drive down the streets all summer long, and there's people parked down
On the grass, I know, I was
And it's just family houses, not even short-term rental houses, so.
That's exactly what I was just thinking of when Jerry said that, because we did a family reunion at our house, and where my house is, you go in the drive and you know, it's about a quarter of a mile from the road into the house, and there's not street parking, it's just our driveway,
Well,
and then everybody parks on our lawn.
I think the difference is you own the lawn, so it must be, you can accommodate people parking, whether it's on the driveway or the lawn, but
Right.
you can't park on your neighbor's lawn.
Right.
That's probably what they're dealing with.
Right, and in our case, I suppose people could park on their own lawn, however,
Doesn't everybody park in the middle in your case?
yeah, but they're not supposed to.
I always see guys on there.
Well, of course, there are people that park there because whether it's Greg coming to do a job, blacktopping a driveway, he's gotta park his equipment there. Yeah, I mean, they do it, but it's a mess. So if you have, 6 people coming next door, where are they gonna put all their cars?
Who owns that, center meeting association?
Nobody. So, well, a inactive association. There is no association.
It already stipulated on your property. So you shouldn't be parking on land you don't own.
Mhm,
You end up
correct.
but they have a beach bay, they just, all those cars parked there. They're all island.
What's the language in Lake Placid's, updated agreement as far as,
Well, they just said no parking.
No
Shall not
parking.
park on any part of the lawn of the property or on the public or private street. That's in the village, maybe?
or is that town of North Elba?
Yeah.
There's a lot of scenarios with land and parking and you know,
Right.
you're in the mountain there, so you got very limited, trees. Other places are just wide open and
Right.
close neighbors. It's hard to
Right.
contain everybody and write one thing that fits everybody.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have a hard time, right, if we try to impose restrictions on the short-term rentals that aren't even restrictions on the general neighborhood, right?
Right.
You're right, there are a lot of areas that just the regular residents, whether they're renting short-term rentals or not, are parking on their grass or adjacent grass.
Well, I think if we think about what the reason is as to why we're putting parking in here, it's so that, a short-term rental, tenant can't, invite 20 people over and have 20 cars there. So theoretically, if you are limiting the number of cars, I wouldn't think it should really matter whether they're parking on that property's grass or not, as long as the car is permitted to be there.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I think we limit the parking by saying, number one, the parking space should have that size, and it's limited to the one vehicle per bedroom. I think that's reasonable. I don't know how else you would describe enhancing that number to the point that you would at some point limit it.
So
You have a lot of different circumstances, so probably the majority, your circumstances there are very different than, say, mine would be.
Okay.
Because the buildings are in completely different
circumstances.
Well, you're close, you're tight, you know, and here, and I have a lot of land around the place, so if I was to put a place in the service down there,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're kind of 900 feet, 800 feet, the nearest neighbor. And we had families getting together for a reunion, and they wanted to have a time. It's not gonna hurt anybody or affect anything if I wanted to do that, and allow them to do that. So, if you write it without any flexibility, I mean, you know, it just restricts the use, and you're controlling something the town shouldn't really, I don't think the town should control that way. And I'm not sure how you would write that balance in there or something, but there's gotta be a way where individuals that would be able to do something that outside of the box that you're writing for this would be able to do that without being in violation of the law. So, you know, and then that covers a lot of different parts of this too.
Well, and we
Right.
also have to tie it into how we're stating the occupancy is.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we're saying a 4-bedroom unit, you're allowed 10 occupants,
Right.
1 car per bedroom isn't gonna work.
Well, it depends. I mean, if one family comes up or two family comes up, you're looking at a couple cars at most. I kind of agree. I don't know that I would do, like you said, you don't want this heard all the time, but there are circumstances where it would work. You know, and then you're limiting somebody in the use of the property where they absolutely would be able to accommodate all of that, especially short term. And so I'm just, you know, in deference to these individuals, you know, you don't want to just blanket everything, and that's the problem with all this legislation. And I've been hit where if your ears in tune to things and you don't understand that, you don't get a chance to say anything, and without any bad intentions, you know, you get put into a situation where it causes problems, it costs you money, it limits your ability to function. So, then you gotta go back and deal with it that way, so.
Can I jump in for a second?
Go ahead.
If you put something in there and you state it within the, permission or within the laws of rules and regulations of the people or the ordinances of that local area. So in other words, if there's a covenant, as in our town, our issue, if there's a covenant that says you're not allowed to park in the grass, and they can't park on the grass, that's within the covenant. So parking within local laws, rules, regulations, or covenants of that particular area, which means that anybody who's there anyway, they have to abide by that covenant, or they have to abide by the local law, or they have to abide by the village law, or whatever. So the parking should be within whatever's regulating parking in that area anyway. The regulations have to be acknowledged, whether it's a covenant, whether it's a local law, et cetera, et cetera.
Now you're talking townwide, you know, there's a lot of different circumstances.
And there's covenants within the town that are private covenants that have to be acknowledged and adhered to. And then you have both the town and the covenant or village, which we're not applying, but that would apply. It has to be within parking rules, regulations, and covenants, or however you want to write it.
Right, and I think any attorney would probably want to have language like that in there as well. You know, if the town says you can't park on the street between, 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., you have to abide by that. So I think you're right on, Mary Ann.
So there was wording for that sort of thing in their updated, North Alva updated land use ordinance. And I can't find it right now.
Well, parking needs to be in compliance with all local laws and covenants for private property, et cetera, et cetera.
Are there any in town now?
I think
Parking?
mainly just in the winter time, as far as all overnight parking for snow removal.
That's the village. I don't know if the town has anything.
Oh, I
Maybe
don't-
they
I don't
do.
know if the town does.
I don't know if
either.
the town does either.
But there are restrictions and covenants in HOA areas.
Yeah, so they have to abide by it.
Yeah, but that's
Rules, regulations,
particular
laws.
to, that's the association's rules, not
Right.
the town's.
Right.
Well,
Right,
if,
right.
right, but if
If they're renting it, yes.
makes reference to that,
Right,
then it
right.
becomes part of the town.
That's right, yeah. No, I understand. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll try to find the wording for that, covenant and restriction.
And I still think we should build in to this paragraph some sort of flexibility. If you have a property, I'm just going back to like Greg's example last week, you know, his property has the ability to house more cars and more vehicles. That we don't want to make it difficult for people to say, okay, you're going to apply for a variance. We want the inspector or the code enforcement officer to be able to say, you know, right here it says you may be granted additional parking, you know, if you have sufficient space.
So how would that be up to the enforcement officer? His or her review?
I would think so, and it kind of ties into the other thing I was looking at in like classes. I don't know if this is in their revised one or not. Of course, now I can't find it. They have on their permit. All this information is listed on the permit. So, you know, number of bedrooms, maximum occupants, maximum number of cars. So your permit gets posted, that's right on the permit, on the property.
Well, if you do away with the one car per bedroom, then you have to rewrite the whole parking section, I think. To include a number of different variables.
Well, I would leave it as one vehicle per bedroom, but that you have the ability that more than one may be allowed if there is sufficient space.
Within all regulations, laws, and covenants.
Correct.
And,
Rules, regulations, laws, and covenants.
restrictions. Deed restrictions?
Yeah, that would work.
All right. Try to find the right wording for that. I mean, I may have to call an attorney to figure it.
Well, they're going to go through and I'm
Yep.
sure pick
Yep.
this apart anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, what else you got, Steve?
All right, on page 3, in that very first line, says occupancy, the maximum occupancy and vehicle for short-term rental unit. I don't
Take vehicle out.
take the and vehicle out.
Yep.
Then for the occupancy, again, I thought we had talked about, or maybe this is the additional 2, I thought we had talked about 2 additional occupants per full-size sleeping apparatus. So like in my house, I have a finished basement and there is a room to the side of the finished basement that has a half bath off of it, and I have a Murphy bed in there. So it's not a bedroom, but there's a full-size sleeping apparatus down there.
But you wouldn't be able to have somebody sleeping in the bedroom if you don't have egress to the outside, out of the basement. If a fire, how do they get out?
There's a walkout basement.
It's a walkout basement.
Mhm.
So you'd have to have
So isn't that part of the 2 additional?
Well, that's what as I was just explaining that, I thought that maybe that is part of the 2 additional, but the way that we have it worded is just 2 additional. So the other sleeping quarters that I have is we have a loft in the house that has a pull-out couch. Again, that's not a bedroom, but it is another room.
But you're calling it a bedroom, you're using it as a bedroom.
Well, but it's not a bedroom, it's more like a family room.
Well, is it a room that meets the building codes for a bedroom?
It's, well, I don't know
Well,
what the building code.
real estate industry thinks that it has to be a minimum of
70 square feet.
Yeah, it's,
and have a closet, but according to New York State Uniform Building Code, it doesn't have to have a closet. So all these years, I always thought you had to have a closet.
that's what I thought
I think
too.
the big
Real
thing,
estate
There's no closet, it does have the square footage,
Does it
it
have
has 2
egress?
windows, well, it
All
has
right.
2 windows,
Yeah.
so,
One in, one out.
right, you know, again, I'm just throwing
Yeah.
examples out
Well,
there,
then-
it is not a bedroom per se.
You could always, if you need a closet, you can always put one of those wardrobes in
You don't
there.
need a closet.
You don't
No.
I looked up the International Building Code, which New York State adopted in 2016. It has no reference to a closet. It says the square footage. Now, the real estate industry always says you have to have a closet.
Right.
So I just found this out when I was researching a couple weeks ago. I never knew that. I always
Yeah.
thought you had to have a closet.
That's what I thought,
Oh, you usually do.
yeah. So,
so what were you proposing, the change?
to word it something like this, an additional 2 occupants per full-size sleeping apparatus may be provided, or may be allowed, provided sleeping apparatus is contained within a room of at least 100 square feet and meets the fire code. So that you can't, you know, shove a, you know, full-size bed or something, you know, in a little teeny area, it's gotta meet the,
Like you were saying, where you have a,
But it's not a
it was
bedroom.
really a closet with no,
right,
Well, you have to meet the minimum of square footage.
right.
right.
And for 2 people, it was 100 square feet, wasn't
I
it?
have to look it up again.
I think it was.
Maximum occupancy for a studio apartment is 2 occupants for the first 220 square feet, and 1 additional occupant for each 100 square feet, but that's in the studio.
Right.
And I thought a bedroom size, I thought we saw it as 70 square
For-
feet, which was,
I saw something-
8 times 9, something like, it was either 70 or 90. Pretty sure it was 70. It's on page 6 of the old, I think it's on page 6 of the old,
Like,
no,
yeah,
No, 7.
number,
yeah,
number 11, each bedroom shall be at least 70 square feet
7,
in size.
right. So 8 times 9 is 72, so roughly 8 times 8.7 or something. It says in their updated one, each bedroom shall be in compliance with the New York State Building Code.
So, for anything that's existing and been in service already,
I don't know what the building code says about that, if it's,
no, I didn't know how that
They
would.
grandfather a lot of things, but I don't know how this town interprets that. So
Right.
most things are grandfathered, you try to fix it up, and you bring it up to the most recent. Those, I don't, we'd have to ask, one of the 2 part-time court officers, the town does.
Talk about parking out on lawns. I had a friend that had a graduation party, because they're all parked on the lawn, all the cars ended up inside the septic tank.
Oh,
So,
I've always been afraid that that's what was gonna happen.
Yeah, you don't know where they are.
Exactly. Oh, my goodness.
make sure you have the right type of tank.
Oh.
Okay.
look up the New York State Building Code for
Okay.
that inspect. Got it on the computer at home.
Jump down to the fire extinguisher paragraph. We've got fully charged fire extinguisher on each floor with one designated for the kitchen. What if we just said plus one designated for the kitchen, just so that there's no confusion that you're one for that floor, whatever floor the kitchen is on, it's not only in the kitchen, you've gotta have one for that floor plus one for the kitchen.
Plus one.
I couldn't hear,
Marion just said good point.
oh, okay. Oh, you have two phones there, I got it.
Yeah, this is.
Okay, yeah,
Now, we then say the extinguisher shall be inspected, prior to a renter occupying the property. The extinguisher shall be inspected monthly to ensure they are fully charged, and a record of inspection initialed by the permit holder shall be maintained and made available to the code enforcement officer upon request. So I'm not sure I'm understanding fire extinguisher shall be inspected prior to a renter occupying the property if they're inspecting it monthly.
Yeah, all right, one or the other. So if we take out prior to occupying the property.
Probably a good idea to go through.
Monthly, I guess. That's what we do it.
What we do is to go through, have just a little checklist. You clean everything here, and you just take a look, because somebody could do something stupid, or discharge it from the back, or take it, and this thing. So it's a real simple thing to check.
Should be one.
Right. It is.
Should be one or the other. Either monthly or.
I think like Al says, you never know what's gonna happen with a renter there, and that if you're, cause you're having a cleaning service presumably come in between renters anyway. So why not make that a part of, like you said, Al, you do
Yeah, we
some
do
sort
them
of
in
checklist.
closet or something, and just have a little checklist that we go on, make sure it's
Should there be a
like
record?
restaurant bathrooms.
Should there be a record of that inspection also?
I think so.
Okay. All right, well then do you think it still needs to be done monthly if you're doing it every
I think it's one or the other, but,
Right.
and maintain a record for sure,
So are we taking out the monthly inspection and,
doing it prior to
right? So
renters.
So they shall be inspected prior to a renter occupying the property and, to ensure they're fully charged and a record of inspection initial,
Correct.
right?
I actually, this is Stacy, I actually think it's a monthly inspection. In my business, I have to do that a monthly. It's there's a little card that gets attached to all the fire extinguishers throughout the building.
Right, but
It's
do you
something
have,
that you do.
do you have transient people that come in every other day, different people?
Well, there's a lot of people in the building, yeah. So, and it's still a monthly inspection is adequate. I don't know, I just,
Are these
Why would-
extinguishers
why would we-
in cabinets?
pardon?
Are the extinguishers in cabinets?
Some are wall hanging, some are in cabinets.
Yeah, it's a little different than
Yeah.
having one in the kitchen or something where you have.
Kitchen sink.
Yeah.
where you have residents in there where they can easily move, or you can't see them with your
Yeah.
eyes or something,
I guess,
that's all.
I guess my point was gonna be, relative to monthly. That's something like if you're thinking in terms of, we're saying that this should be initialed by the permit holder and maintained and made available to the code enforcement officer. Monthly is something that everybody can wrap their head around. The code enforcement officer isn't necessarily gonna know what the rental schedule is. So it just seems like, it seems a little bit impractical even from like a records or a enforcement situation. You could have had renters in there, say the enforcement officer looks at it and doesn't see that it was inspected monthly, you just say, oh, well, I didn't have a renter in there for a month. Monthly is just a nice, regular way to do it, and that's pretty good frequency to be inspecting a fire extinguisher. That's all. I just think it's just from a practical perspective as far as being involved with a code enforcement officer and initialing it and having a record of it. Monthly is just something that's very clear to everybody.
Well, and you're absolutely correct. However, if you have 7 different families through that, short-term rental building, through the month, any one of them could have discharged a fire extinguisher and not told anybody about it. So I see it both ways.
Or taking it or whatever, and I clearly get your point. In a commercial situation where you're talking about homeowners, I mean, renters in private homes, which is different than a hotel and cabins and stuff, and but it's probably not a big deal.
Yeah, I can go either way, whichever way you wanna do it. I don't think both should be.
That's what I would do personally, whether it's required or not. You know,
Right.
just check it, and then we
Right.
clean,
Oh,
and set up for the
exactly.
next person, you know, or set up our other buildings, that's what we do.
I can see it both ways as well.
Can you add something every monthly, but will immediately be, replaced with a fully charged upon discharge of a fire extinguisher? The little caveat upon discharge of a fire extinguisher that be replaced immediately, or?
Well, you're ensuring they're fully charged, you're signing off they're fully charged, whether you do it on a monthly basis or a renter basis.
Right, and then if
So-
one gets discharged and on that first week, and then you've got 3 more, different families coming in for the second, third, and fourth week, you have to ensure that they have a fully charged fire extinguisher for that second, third, and fourth family. So there might be just as a point of information, if there's a discharge of any fire extinguisher, it shall be replaced with a fully charged fire extinguisher.
But that means you gotta
For the
inspect your
next
fire
rental family or
extinguishers
something
every
to that
time you
effect.
change
Right, that means
occupancy.
it's gotta be
You
inspected
know,
Right.
after
anyway,
every
that's
rental.
where I was coming from,
Right.
and it solves that issue, but, yeah.
And who inspects it, really? I mean, if you had a cleaning service, as you had mentioned, that if the cleaning service does come in, it doesn't matter who actually
No.
says, yeah,
No,
so then,
well, it does say the permit holder.
Right, so-
Record of inspection.
right.
Well, we
So the
can
so the
adjust,
permit holder should do it every month.
well, and we can adjust some of that language to say inspected by permit holder or
Or
designated agent.
agents, right.
There you go. That could be a cleaning lady or man.
Right.
All right, so which one are we taking out? Are we gonna take a vote on this? Al, what do you say? Which way?
I do it each time
You
a
turn.
new set of customers come in.
Stacy on the
That's just
phone.
the way I do it.
Stacy on the phone, you say monthly, correct?
I think monthly is
Monthly.
more practical for the verbiage here as far
Okay.
as enforcement, since we're tying this to being made available to the code enforcement officer. But as a practical matter, certainly, you know, it makes sense to check it before every renter, but as a practical matter for the initialing and maintaining the record, I just think monthly is a more practical way to do it, but
Court?
I can go either way.
I'm gonna add it on my list, but it wasn't on my house, you know, we outsource our cleaning. So it's, just one more thing for them to check, but I think it should be not the owner, their agent, you know, owner or agent.
Or agent.
Or agent, right, we got that. So do you
So the
think,
time frame doesn't,
so do you think
It'd be
monthly
smart.
or after every rental?
well, you're gonna clean it after every rental.
Right,
so
and, right,
Okay.
You're not gonna let somebody sleep in
you
it
know,
without
so if
cleaning
you
it.
had the, you know, little tags on each fire extinguisher, and every time the cleaning service came in, they're gonna date and initial that tag, that's all
Yeah,
they
some
need
places,
to
they
do.
have a record, we'll check out
Yeah.
what you do and throw in a file, I mean, there's a lot of ways of doing that.
I just think it's worth the little extra step to ensure
Yeah.
everybody's safety.
I wouldn't use tags, they get
So
lost,
are
they
you
Oh,
get
saying-
moved, they get
yeah.
missing. So in the cleaning closet, there's a little checkoff list, you go around, did I
Yeah.
do this, and this, and, you know, that's what you do, and it's dated to the
Right.
day that you do it.
Yeah, in a business, they have the tags hanging off, so.
Well, that's,
So you're
yeah,
saying-
a lot of times they're in cabinets, or they're
Yeah.
hanging up in their bags,
That's
a little
the way
different.
I would do
I have a
it.
couple of those too.
I
Mary
mean,
Ann?
like for my long-term rentals, that's what I do, is I go, you know, when
Mhm.
somebody vacates, I go through and
Mhm.
make sure the fire extinguishers are good.
Okay,
After every rental with an agent, owner or agent.
Yeah.
okay. All right, well, so it's it seems to be overwhelmingly then we'll leave in the line, fire extinguishers shall be inspected prior to a renter occupying the property, and we'll take out the monthly, and we're gonna add in there, to ensure they're fully charged and a record of inspection initialed by the permit holder or designated agent, i.e., I could even put in there, i.e., cleaner, but I'll leave it as designated agent.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Alright, and that is all I had,
Okay.
that's all I had.
Now, I'm just gonna point out a couple things in this, updated, North Elba agreement. They put a lot of, they changed their short-term rental definition somewhat, not significantly, but they did change it. They added a number of, different definitions that we should at some point take a look at and decide whether we're going to include. They also added a hosted short-term rental as opposed to an unhosted short-term rental situation. So there's a number of new definitions that we should at some point consider adopting.
We also talked about, I'm wondering if it's possible. It's with my work schedule and everything, it's impossible to get all of this stuff here the day before the meeting. You know, the funeral all day yesterday, and sit down and digest this and let it go and come back and meaningfully contribute anything. It'd be nice if we had this stuff, everything, even the minutes. I know it's a lot of work, and you do a great job, but you know, like a week before a meeting or something, so we have time, because sometimes schedules just don't permit here, and then we got to go back and then I'll reread it and we rehash things. I'm wondering if we could just kind of like going forward, kind of.
Well, I thought I did send all this out a month ago, or 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you sent this out 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Really?
Right after our last meeting, I
I
sent it out.
didn't see, I was just saying, most of the time he does do it right after.
Yeah, well,
the meeting.
initially, then I haven't been getting until just the day before.
I didn't see this one until
Oh, is that
just
right?
last
This is
night.
the
Well, maybe,
It's the newer one.
Oh,
This is
maybe,
November. They
maybe.
rewrote it after they had 3 or 4 public hearings.
Yep.
This is what came out of those public hearings, so it's new to us because it's now what their new proposed one is. Now, have they voted on this? Are we reading that?
it was enacted on January 9th.
Oh, this is law now?
No, just a
Yeah,
couple of weeks ago.
yeah.
So this is the new law
Yeah.
for up there.
That's their new,
Regs.
this is their new,
Yeah.
local law.
So the reason I said that is I tried going through this, but we talked about, and you had mentioned, if you have on-site management, because you get into the situation where you have mixed use, where you have, some people have seasonal rentals, also have cottages, also have mobile homes within it. Here, they're on-site, they're there all the time. We have a situation like that. I don't think that it would be right to burden them, the cottages, considering them, even though they are short-term rentals, it's like hotel rooms. And I didn't get a chance to go through this, but I didn't see that language in there excluding that, but maybe I didn't get a chance to go through it. But
I didn't get a chance to go
I think
through
that if you have on-site management there, then I don't think this should
I know
apply to
we
you.
talked about it last meeting.
Do we have it in
They
here?
they do discuss hosted versus unhosted.
Right, I saw some of that, I just didn't get a chance to study it.
What's the difference between the two?
You gotta check it.
Hosted short-term rentals as defined shall be permitted in all planning districts. It must be rented for short-term rental purposes for a minimum of 14 days per calendar year. There shall be a limit of 48 short-term rental permits hosted in the town of North Elba.
What
They
page,
actually limit
Jerry?
these numbers. That was on page 19.
Thank you.
But the definition was before that. They actually even included a definition of the term rental. A hosted short-term rental property at which an owner of the property resides for at least 184 days per calendar year, that is the primary residence of the owner, and at which an owner stays overnight during the entire term of each short-term rental of the property.
So it might be more like a bed and
Right.
breakfast?
Exactly.
That's
So
what
in
we're
the
doing.
They're
new
calling
one,
it a host.
they mention a lot
Okay.
of examples, actually by name. They even call out the business name that followers under that category. So I noticed that was added a lot to the new, probably from our public hearings, so we didn't make an exception, or we didn't make an exception, they added the limit.
I'm not sure we would have a lot of hosted short-term rental
You know how
units.
many
It'd be just bed and
Right.
breakfasts.
Right.
Probably one.
But I don't think there was anything in here.
CPI club.
Oh, the, Heart House
Yeah, the
you're
Heart
talking
House,
about?
that would be.
True.
The true one,
Right,
that I can
right.
see as a.
Well, and
real-
then there's the Captain District
Yeah,
House
that's a-
downtown.
So very, you can count them on a couple of hands, I'm sure.
Yeah, they have 10 bedrooms at the Heart House. And suitable parking.
Looks like they had some nice, events that they
Yeah,
were
we-
starting to do.
we
Yeah, I
went-
know, we did too.
We went to an event, back in October, November for, what was it, Mary? What did they call it?
It was the mystery dinner.
Mystery theater.
I wanted
It
to
was
go to
really a lot
that,
of
and
fun.
then the next thing I knew, they were sold out.
Yep, it was a lot of fun. They served dinner. The dinner was meager, but still, by 8 o'clock at night, I don't want to eat a big meal anyway.
Mhm.
It was nice. It was actually very well done. Okay, so, Stacy, where are we going next?
But going back to the on-site, I know we had talked about that as far as our ordinance goes. Do we have that in here anywhere at the moment?
What, hosted?
No, where we're calling it like on-site management, would be excluded.
Well, in our short-term rental, definition, I
That's
think.
what I'm looking at,
I think, go down, the definition excludes timeshare, hotels, B&B establishments. So I think that would be a hosted.
We might have to add hosted though, I know a person
Right.
that rents the island out, they, in part of it, the whole time he rents out part of it. So you don't want to really, it's basically not a bed and breakfast, you don't serve breakfast,
right.
but he's in the property.
So,
So basically, he can make the rules, get enforced all the time.
Maybe instead of saying we have to stay in the same residence, but you have to be on the same property.
Right,
be
that
considered to be
goes
yeah,
back
on the
to like
same
the
property,
on-site,
so you're on on-site management,
Management.
right.
But-
is
Smart.
excluded.
I thought we talked about that.
We did, but I'm not, I brought
Yeah, I don't think
it
we
up
have to.
because I don't see that in here.
Well, a lot of things we don't talk about, you know, saying we don't agree on.
This definition excludes timeshare, hotels, bed and breakfast establishment, and school or non-profit dormitories. I think we just should add in there, you know, that it excludes properties with on-site, ownership and or management.
so this definition excludes timeshare, hotel, bed and breakfast, and or schools or nonprofit dormitories.
As well as properties with on-site ownership and or management.
How about hosted rental? All right, properties with on-site management. On-site management and what?
On-site, as well as properties with on-site management.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what makes it so hard is so many unique situations.
Yeah.
Here.
fine. Well, Lake Placid says they have 473 short-term rentals.
How many?
Well, this is a newspaper article, so I don't know if it's true. It
Yeah.
says, Lake Placid has 473 short-term rentals, and they have 200 people with permits already. So half the people have already applied.
I'm sorry, I was having a hard time hearing that.
I mumble, sorry about that. I'm just Googled, the short-term rentals for Lake Placid, town of Elba, and, popped up a bunch of facts, and I like looking at that. This is from the northcountrypublicradio.org. It says that there were 473 short-term rentals in Lake Placid, and as of the printing of their newspaper on 12/22/22, there was 200 permits already applied for. We'd have to get some extra code enforcers.
Right, going back to definition of short-term rental, under our current definition, this definition expressly includes rooming board, house, as that term is described in, and we left that blank because we never defined it. But what you're saying is, a rooming board generally is hosted and/or there's someone there in charge, is that correct?
A boarding house or a bed and breakfast type of situation.
Right.
So would
I
we
never
take
say
that line
but I
out?
presume so.
Because they took it out in
Second one.
the second one. So
Yeah, I would see
I'm
it be an
suggesting
entirely
that we-
different set of circumstances, because you're not gonna have happen in a bed and breakfast that you would have in somebody's leasing a home for 3 days.
All right, so I'm taking that line out.
Excuse me.
Okay?
Which line was that? Rooming board?
Under short-term rental definition, which is on page 1 of our
Yeah.
draft, fifth line down, this definition expressly includes rooming board house, as that term is described in blank.
Okay.
I'm taking that out. And we're adding property and on-site management.
So what would be considered on-site management? If I have 2 properties next door to each other in a neighborhood, and I live in one and I rent the other one out, is that considered on-site management if I'm right next door?
Are they attached?
Is the property attached? Are they on the same
Same
deeded
plot?
property?
Within the same building? Are the 2 dwellings within the same building, as a townhouse would be?
No.
Well, I'm just going to hypothetical, just to, try to understand if there's gonna be anomalies with that.
Right.
Well, if you have several dwellings within one building, and you're in one of those dwellings within the same building, I would assume that you would be considered there and present. If you
Yeah.
have 2 houses and each have a quarter acre of land, and you're living in one house and the renters are in the other house, then I would say you're not in attendance.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, 'cause they're
So
2
if you're on the
separate
same
properties.
plot of land.
Right.
If they're
now you're
adjacent,
finding
you're
that.
effectively there, really, aren't you?
If you're sharing a wall, you're effectively there in one building with several dwellings.
Well, yeah, but in the cases, I'm like Barton Healy's there, that's a big piece of property. He doesn't share a wall with any of his places. He has cottages he's renting.
Right.
He has
Right, but they're all on the
That's-
same piece of property.
Yes, yes, they're all
So that's the site.
same piece of property, or I don't know if there's
Right.
different lots there, but it's all owned, it's all managed, or, I don't know how the lease
Right, but
structure is.
that's probably a motel designation.
Correct.
No,
or
they're like
campground.
Pinehurst. So they have cottages, they have motels, they have, like 4-bedroom, they're essentially, it's like a summer home that they lease there, so that you have all that mixed in.
Right.
We have a lot of stuff all mixed in, so.
Is that the same tax map? Same parcel of property?
Well, a lot of these
Tax map?
places have picked up parcels of property, and the business spans a number of different parcels, so I don't think you can,
Go by that.
you can't really go by that, because legally, if you have the businesses operating all those, but they're contiguous, they're not, there's not, let me say, what's the word, there's no, it's like this table, you know? I mean, you know, this and this, and the business spans that, and you're here. There's no, private piece of property in between there where you're running your business is, and then, you know, it's like owning different parcels.
Are there separate deeds to each property?
I would imagine so.
Well, then it's separate property.
It's a separate property, but they're contiguous.
Right.
You know, like we just maneuvered things around for different reasons, so we have multiple parcels, but it's all one big piece, it's all owned.
Right, but I wouldn't consider that on-site management. If you're living in a house and 200 yards away, you got another house where you're renting out, I wouldn't consider
That's on site.
on-site. I think on-site management means you're in that unit somehow.
But in.
Well, we got 32 acres there, okay?
Right.
So I have people all over, but I'm there, or somebody's there, or 4 of us are all there at the same time, you know, employees around, and we have on-site management all the time. Somebody's there virtually 24/7 during our, you know, hours of operation.
Right, but are you having short-term, are those short-term rentals, is that considered in the definition of short-term rental?
Well, that's what we're talking about here. I don't think that we want to make sure that, you know, I'm not going to have 50 buildings, 50 places all of a sudden become designated short-term rentals, because they're not. They don't fit the definition of having a house, you know, an Airbnb. They're not Airbnb. I mean, I could market through Airbnb if I needed to, but I don't. But how you market them is less, it doesn't really matter.
It's not an individual dwelling.
Well, there are individual dwellings there. Like, you know, you can have multiple cottages or multiple mobile homes that you lease on a daily or weekly basis. But they're all.
Is it considered like a commercial operation?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's somewhere where that's excluded. It may not
Well,
say it in ours, but I think it says it in the North Elba one.
It does. You're right, Stacy, it does.
So stating that it's, you know, commercial properties are excluded.
It did say that?
Right.
Well, I didn't have a chance to review all this.
So under hotel motel, the
Right.
definition is a commercial establishment, building, or group of buildings where overnight transient guests are lodged for remuneration, designed primarily to accommodate the traveling public and have a minimum of 5 rental units. A hotel motel may include additional ancillary services such as restaurants, meeting rooms, recreation facilities, and laundry services. It sounds like what you're describing is closer to a hotel motel.
What page are we reading that on?
Page 3, top of page 3. And again, we didn't add those definitions in our draft, but yes.
No, we shouldn't.
So Al, read that and tell us what you think.
You put me on the spot.
And who's in the, I know Stacy and Jerry are in the room. Who else is there?
Al Presti and Court Rutherford.
Court.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I think that, we're gonna have to bounce around a lot of these different hypotheticals because there's so many different scenarios.
Yes.
We just gotta make sure that we know that, you know, what fits under what and what really makes sense and what we're really trying to,
Well, I think we're using the town of North Elba, Lake Placid, because they've bounced it around, they've revised it. They have a village and a town. One of the things that we need to include in our statement is that it doesn't include the village currently. That we are not, the village does not want to be included.
That's given. Automatically, any town hall, I think that's given.
oh, is that true?
Right.
We're not including the village?
Not as
We
a
can't, you
town,
can't
no.
include, I don't believe you can include the
No.
village.
They don't want to be included.
But they're looking at it.
But they're looking at it.
I'm getting different feedback on that. I was told explicitly that we do wanna do something, but we're gonna see how you guys do.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
Right.
So we're gonna go there.
They may go there.
We're gonna be the guinea pig.
But right now, this document is strictly for the town.
Yes,
And
correct.
in
That's correct.
North Alba, Lake Placid, they actually divided the town and village up.
Yeah.
Later on in the
Well,
document.
that would make a lot of sense, cause
would.
situations are different.
Right.
And what the town, what the village is willing, and village residents are willing to absorb is different than maybe what the town is. I'd have to think about this, but that certainly makes a big difference.
Right.
But I don't know that the number of accommodations is really relevant.
No.
If he has 3 cottages down there and he's on site and he's managing everything, you know, why does he have to have 5? If he has 1, why does it, you know, but it's within the confines of
Well,
an
it's a
established
business.
commercial
Right.
entity.
Well, that may be just a
That's-
state definition of hotel motel, the 5 units, I don't know.
Right, well, I'm not just talking about hotel motel, this is not hotel motel, but these are cottages. So they fall under that, you know, transient, what do you call it?
Adjoining parcels, et cetera.
Yeah. Traveling public, vacationing.
Yeah, I
Well,
mean,
and this may be something too, that, you know, once it's in the hands of the attorneys, they're
I can
going
see a
to-
hotel motel would have more than 5 units, I mean, I understand after that, but should be other language in there explicitly,
well,
so there's no confusion later on that,
it should be in where?
well, in the definition
Definition of
here,
hotel motel.
where it's excluded as a short-term rental, so those of us that have commercial businesses, where we have mixed use, which has seasonal patrons, and maybe some weekly rental units, like cottages also on the property, and that, or.
Right, so how would you word that?
So
Would you?
I have to think about it.
Okay.
Here, a little bit, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but somehow, I have to go back to my other notes.
And the
The way you-
zoning on your property though is commercial.
Yes,
So maybe that's how we sort of differentiate
Yeah.
it based on the zoning.
it's commercial, we have variance to operate within, you know, closer to certain property lines than, you know, because we're going back a long way.
Right,
You know, and
right.
things change and warm grow, so, you know, you're there, you can't tear buildings down and move them out. I
Yeah.
just had their survey where the property line, you know, our neighbor's building is right on the property line, you know, I mean, what are you
Yeah,
gonna do? That's the way it was
yeah.
years ago,
Yep,
you know, so.
yeah, but for our definition, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
that's one
I have
that
to think
is
about
commercial,
how to do that, or research
commercial
the here.
zoning versus, 'cause really, you know, what
If
most-
you're a commercial operation already, I don't think you have to get into the zoning and all that stuff. If you're already permitted, you're operating. So all those places all these places along the river are established,
Right.
long-established entities that are doing this. They're not, short-term rental is like buying a home and leasing it out, like the Airbnb thing, right? That's a short-term.
Right, which
And
is
they're
gonna be
scattered all over the place.
Right, on residential zones.
Within a residentially zoned
Right, and
area,
that's
yeah,
what
and it's still
that's what
residential, yeah.
That might be the
focusing
key.
on.
Yeah.
You might wanna write that in though. With
But we
have- that's an important-
residential.
I'm sorry, say again, say.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're okay.
I think that's a really important aspect of this is to, you know, really make sure that we've got this scope, like what are we really going after with this, right? And, I mean, is it actual like commercial zone? Pretty much everything along the water in Alexandria Bay is considered, I think it's zoned like marine residential, except like the downtown area in the village maybe. But so like where is your property? What would that actually be considered like from a zoning? Is it the marine residential?
Yeah, I think so, marine residential.
Marine residential.
Yeah, but almost the entire
Aren't
waterfront
we
is.
trying to establish against residents though?
Right, that's what
This
we're
is for
trying
short-term
to
rental for
distinguish, is to,
residents.
right, is like, so that his place, Barton Healy's, you know, they're excluded from this, you know, what our focus is, you know, the individual home within a residential area,
Right.
you know,
So
we're,
but why, but I guess, you know, that's why the definitions are so important, and then actually kind of bouncing some of these real hypotheticals, like, I guess, or actual examples off of it to make sure that our definitions are airtight, right? Or there's just gonna be so much confusion, I think. So I think it's worth taking the time to actually look at like these real examples and then say, okay, is this what we really wanna go after as far as a short-term rental? And make sure that the definitions are very crystal clear for all sorts of different, there's gonna be so many different anomalies in that. So I think it's worth spending the time to do that and, you know, maybe understand the zoning and, because I don't think we can just arbitrarily say, oh yeah, this, you know, there could be circumstances, right, where you've excluded one area but not another, but they could be similar situations.
So
I have a question about commercial properties, because I'm not involved in the commercial business. So Al, is there any kind of tax break or identifying information regarding a tax ID number or any kind of anything that separates you as a commercial enterprise?
You said a tax
versus
break?
Residential?
I'm sure I don't get a tax break. No, yeah, of course. You have to have your federal tax ID numbers when you're filing your business and everything. I think if I had a rental property, then you just normally would file Schedule C and show your income and expenses, and that would be it.
Right,
And you would do it under your personal, Social Security number or whatever. But if you're a business, then you have an EIN.
You can create an LLC and it can have its own EIN number.
Oh, that's true too, yeah.
But the question is land use, not
You're
your
right.
taxes.
Yeah.
Yes.
The question is land use. So what is your land use zoning?
Commercial.
So if I could just
All of it.
interject here for a
So
second.
it's not necessarily marine residential.
No.
Well,
Looking at the town of Lake George's ordinance, they say this code applies to use of residences for short-term rental.
Yeah, that's a good way.
I think that's a really good way.
Yeah.
I do too.
So I agree with you. It's gotta
That way
be,
we don't have any of these little
residences, and that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
focus on.
right. So to answer your question, maybe I didn't understand what you asked me, Jerry. It's zone marine residential, which allows certain type of commercial entities in there. So we have an RV park. You have cottages, and mobile home parks and cottages, and you have all of that through there. We have marinas that's established in there. All right, that's the type of use I don't know what else could be. I don't know what other type of businesses could be established in there. And most of those places existed long before there was even zoning. So, but that's the way it's used now. So anything we would want to do going forward would have to conform to that, which we do, because it's all residential oriented, but it's managed residences. So in your case, where you're over there, you don't have a management organization that oversees everything.
Right.
And
But
we're all individually owned.
Right. In our case, we lease everything and we control everything. There's nothing that anybody, they own their boats and lease the slip, they own their homes and lease the land. We provide certain services for them, but we control all that, and the health department oversees us. So we have an annual permit.
Right.
We have certain obligations within the permit to provide 24/7 management services on site. You know, so somebody has to be available, you know, or close by all the time during operating hours in case there's a problem.
Right, so clearly, I think in your case, you own all the buildings, you own all the property.
Well, the mobile homes that are there, we don't own. You know,
But you rent those out,
no, they're leased by the owners. You just
Right.
lease the land.
Right, but they're not short-term leases.
No, but we have other
So that has,
buildings on there that are short-term.
okay, but
Okay.
I'm saying that exclude all those trailers that are rented out.
You have to exclude the cabins
seasonally,
and cottages, all of the things.
that are rented out for more than 30 days.
Everything's within the boundaries that the business owns and operates there.
So Lake George refers to their permit as the residential rental permit.
I think that would save a lot of
I do.
headache.
Yeah, I think you're right, that clarifies that.
I do
So
too.
no established commercial entity that has cottages
Right.
or mobile homes
All of
or
that's
whatever
excluded.
inside would be included in that, no?
Right, exactly,
And I
especially
think
so
that's
we.
what Lake Placid sort of tried to do in their last.
Tightened it up.
They started giving exceptions to those type of things.
Well, ours includes any residential building or apartment or single or two-family dwelling,
Right,
condominium, townhouse, guest house, cottage, cabin.
We need,
Well, what if
maybe
you're
we
in the
think those
same
definitions
zone,
to
like
be
what if you're in
compliant
marine
with that
residential and you're one of those properties, but you're literally right next door to something that operates as a motel? You know what I mean? I feel like there's a lot of different scenarios. Then why is the motel or hotel exempt and not, you know, a house or a condominium that might be right next to that motel?
because a motel is not a residence. You know, forget what the zoning is, it's not a residence.
There's a commercial entity.
Right.
Yeah. But you still have you could still have all of the same issues that we're concerned about with short-term rentals.
But they usually have
in an
on-site
adjacent
management.
hotel.
Right, but we're not trying to, you know, our ordinance is not trying to oversee those scenarios. Our ordinance is trying to oversee the residential short-term rental.
Yeah.
So how do you define residential short-term rental?
A dwelling that is rented in whole or in part to
Where's
one
that,
person.
where's this? Oh, yeah, sorry. A dwelling, yeah, there you go, okay.
Or we could say a residential dwelling.
I think that's redundant, but we can.
I think it's redundant too. A dwelling is a dwelling where you have places to sleep.
But it doesn't address the use, though. Short-term rental, a dwelling unit, which is rented home or part, and the person, to be appeared, it includes the rent, the residential building, an apartment, etc. Here, accessory, which is
Well, Al,
rented.
I-
Oh, rented is living quarter, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, with kitchen, yeah, sorry.
So Al, why don't you give it some thought for next time
Yeah.
and figure out your zoning up there, your commercial status, what your short-term rentals might consist of, and come back to us with some thought as to how we can address that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because
Because I think we're getting hung up on,
Yeah.
I think we're getting hung up on this and we don't
Yeah.
have an answer yet.
Right, I agree, yeah. That just, so you talked about hotel, you know, so usually you think of a hotel, motel, where you have one building, contiguous rooms in it, but, you know, as long as it's a commercial
A
establishment.
motel has cabins.
Motel can have cabins.
Can
Can
have
have
cabins.
cabins, sure.
Sure.
So,
We could have yeah, I didn't, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we're.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, yeah.
We've gotta distinguish between
Yeah,
the
'cause Rockledge, for
type
instance,
of, right,
yeah.
between
Yeah,
the
okay.
business entity versus the type of
Yes.
I just looked at
units
a
that it
zoning
has.
map. So for instance, Tennis Island is considered residential.
Right,
So if you look at the town zoning map, I think residential is the key word. You don't want this type of stuff going on in residential
Residential
sections without
areas.
following a permit.
yeah.
Is Tennis Island considered marine residential or?
No, just
Yeah,
residential. It
no,
says
is.
residential.
No, it's marine residential.
But you could have a residence within a marine residential
Correct.
commercial area.
Correct.
That could be included in it.
Correct.
So the definition has to be,
Mhm.
It says it's only residential.
No, I'm
And that's
sure
why I
it's
like the
marine
way
residential.
Lake George has it
would be.
worded, because
I'm
that's
sure
a
it is.
residence.
It is most definitely marine residential without any
The
question.
existing land use, March 2015, it was just residential. So maybe somebody changed it since
zoning.
2015.
It absolutely was changed in 2020. It said that all
Okay.
previous designations have been deemed
Yeah, this is dated 2015.
enforceable, yes.
That's a shame.
Why is that a shame?
Because they didn't update the latest map on their website.
That's all right. You're gonna make sure they do. All right.
All right, before we hit 8:30, do we want to bounce back to the property requirements section and see if there's anything else that needs to be included in there? We have house number, parking, fire prevention, occupancy, fire extinguishers, garbage, insurance.
Correct. Short-term residential standards, occupancy, off-street parking, house visible, garbage removal, we got. Campers, do we have campers? Do we want campers?
I don't know how, how much we want to.
And tenting and,
Well, I don't think you can say tenting because you might, throw the kids outside in a tent, and
true.
I don't see anything wrong
Okay.
with that.
So we're gonna skip that.
Isn't the town, like, talk about doing something with RVs at one point in time, they were having a concern
Of the
about?
town?
Well, I thought I had,
Well, they were looking at,
How about the wedding, corporate events, commercial functions, or any other similar outdoor events must end by, shouldn't even have any commercial events.
You shouldn't have commercial events, exactly, residential area.
what you're thinking of.
people buying a lot,
The water, they wanted to
So,
make sure
so
that the water usage.
the other part of F is, all such events are subject to application
Oh, is that what
of
it was?
applicable noise ordinances. Weddings, corporate events, and commercial functions are not allowed in short-term rental in the village of Lake Placid.
There you go.
Maybe we should, say all such events are subject to noise ordinance,
Which we don't have.
which we don't have yet.
We're gonna have a junk lawsuit, though.
I
Public
saw
hearing
that.
coming.
Is it coming?
Yeah.
No, we still don't have it then.
No, takes a long time to get this.
So, should we say
So if
that?
somebody owns an island and they wanna rent their property out for short-term rental and somebody wants to rent it and have a wedding on their island, they can't do that under if we put that kind of language in.
Right.
Are we trying to restrict that?
I want to think.
You want, you have other private residences on that island. That was one of the biggest issues regarding the Sport
Sport
Island and all
right.
the islands that were around Sport Island, is that they wanted to have commercial weddings, banquets, et cetera, and all the other islands are like, oh, we're not gonna put up with all that road traffic and the big dots and all the noise. No, and so that's what happened when the town sent it to Jefferson County, said let Jefferson County determine it. Jefferson County said no.
So in Lake Placid, they're not prohibiting it, they're just saying the events must end by 10 p.m.
I remember when Mr. Duryea,
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I just,
St. Helena.
it doesn't feel right to me to impose
He had
certain
a big
restrictions
cruise up
on
in
people that may rent out their short-term
Yeah,
rentals
South Pebbles.
when even the residences that live there the majority of the time or full-time aren't held to the same standards, you know what I mean?
I agree.
So just because I don't rent my place out, I can go and have a wedding, but the
Right,
guy
so-
that's renting his place and someone else can't. So we need to square that.
Right, so I think that's where, if we do square that way and do allow it, that's where parking becomes an issue. If we start allowing weddings and corporate events and commercial functions, in residential areas, then parking becomes a problem.
Well, if you have your parking restrictions, regardless of what else they want to do, they're gonna have to figure out how to park a bus in or something.
Right.
That's it
Right.
gets sticky when you start doing that in the residential area, and other than the islands.
Well, that's where
Maybe if
our
you select a-
occupancy numbers and our parking would apply.
Yeah,
If you're gonna allow that sort of thing, it's gotta be a small wedding
very small.
and or corporate event.
But is that same rule applied to the person that lives on the same street that doesn't rent his place out as a short-term rental? Is he restricted to a small wedding?
Right,
No.
and they wouldn't be, and there's no town noise ordinance, so there's nothing saying that the homeowner has to abide by that.
But a homeowner's
Well,
not gonna have a wedding.
Any rule, regulations, or parking, issues they're gonna have to apply, you know, everything that town says they're gonna have to do, they have to abide by. So if I lived on Main or Bailey Settlement Road and I decided that I wanted to have a wedding, if I had 20 acres of land, that'd be great, but if I lived, outside the town or outside the village and I wanted to have a wedding, there's parking ordinances, there's town parking ordinances. And there's all sorts of rules and regulations as well. So whatever it applies to where you are is what needs to apply to everybody across the board.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we just need to make sure that we're not putting something in our language that holds the residents that may be a short-term rental once in a while to a different standard than the actual residents, right? So I think we stick
That's
to
why
language
I think
as far
the law
as
that
relying on the
right
existing
now,
ordinances.
that has to be applied to across the board.
The one thing
If
is
you have
gonna,
short-term rental and you're allowed to park anywhere, then whatever. And if you're not allowed to park and there are restrictions, those restrictions have to be across the board.
one thing that's gonna distinguish the two, though, that a private residence is not gonna have 5 weddings in the summer. They're not going to promote if it's the right location, they're not going to promote, use the property for that type of a purpose, whereas a short-term rental could be. And a lot of the short-term rentals are in areas where it'd be wonderful to have a wedding reception, but it's not a good venue for it, so, I don't know how you see it.
So this would be a section that we could, before our next meeting, everybody kind of think about as far as how we would phrase, let's call it events.
Why don't you get a copy of their?
Was this the final? That's the one he just sent us was the final. The one that they enacted. Yeah. So it's dated 11/14/22. That's their final.
Did I miss anything you're taking note of?
No, we're all just gonna kind of think about how we could phrase this paragraph that we're calling events
Okay.
to start discussing our next meeting. And then we still have the, procedure, like the application procedure to discuss. We still have compliance and appeals to discuss.
Yep. They have they
Penalties.
added quite an appeal process in their new and updated,
I saw that,
it looks pretty,
somewhat
substantial.
streamlined too, so you're not going through the.
Yep. Okay, all right,
Okay?
it is 8:30.
Okay.
Do we know when we're meeting next?
Our next meeting would be,
23rd.
there we go.
That's the right idea. No paper.
Well,
Yeah.